Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to another episode of EOTT with me, Jimmy James, and always a pleasure to share another conversation with the wonderful Tommie Kelly from the Emerald Isle. Tommie, how are you, brother?
How are you? I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome.
This is my new office, so this is like officially the very first thing I've done since I moved in. So
it's looking good, brother. It's looking really good. Really good. Yeah, I really like it. So some of you will be familiar with Tommie and his channel, Adventures in Woo Woo, and some of you won't. So kind of to give you a little bit of an idea, Tommie's all about kind of, excuse me, kind of discussing, investigating, and testing ideas, rituals, and kind of systems and beliefs really that are kind of suggested by all the old various teachings and the occult and spirituality. Things like chaos magic, law of attraction, New Age, Satanism, Thelema, Wicca, UFOs, Tantra, Hermetics, meditation, aliens, demons, gods, spirits, ceremonial magic, the full works, divination, and basically anything that kind of a skeptic would consider woo-woo, hence the title of the channel. So as is tradition on the channel, Tommie, we kind of like to get to know our guests a little bit. So if you'd be so kind, brother, kind of give us a bit of background, if you would, just tell us how you got on the path that you're on.
Yeah, well, I suppose it depends on I suppose where you want to start with that, because you can start from the very beginning, which is
sometimes
a good place to start.
So yeah, start wherever you know.
Well, it's kind of this magic or the occult or the spiritual or whatever word is the best word for that. I can never set it. Depends on the day whether I'm spiritual or a magician or none of them. It depends on the day. But that kind of my interest in that started when I was very, very young, when I was like early, even probably preteen, like 12, something like that. And it kind of came out of discussions I had with my aunt, who was into theosophy and Alice Bailey and like lots of New Age stuff like Louise Hay. And she also got me into a guy called Stuart Wilde, who was huge in the New Age scene back in the kind of mid 80s and early 90s. And then kind of no one knows him at all anymore, which is kind of quite weird, because he would seem to drop in an awful lot with an awful lot of chaos magician thought as well. But it's kind of, chaos magicians don't seem to like New Age for whatever reason. So around that time I kind of got into it, and I was kind of got on board with it and got thinking about it and all, and kind of led to journeys that got me to then into, I suppose I got into Alan Watts for a while. I got into Buddhism. I think everyone kind of gets into Buddhism at some stage. And then in my kind of mid-20s, I went to college. I went back to college and I did holistic health studies. So we were doing stuff like Reiki, aromatherapy, reflexology. And I was trying to do all of those kind of things. The approach of the course was to do all of those things in a non-woo-woo way, to try and do it as kind of closer to, I suppose, like a beautician's or some sort of therapist or something like that. That was the kind of approach. But in the Reiki thing, obviously there is a fair bit of woo-woo in that. And kind of after that burnt me out a bit on the whole thing, because I was kind of, it's very much, obviously when you're going to do a course like that, it was a 2-year course, that it becomes an awful lot about, setting it up as a business. And so it all became about money and all of that thing. And I hadn't any interest in doing it in that kind of, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it, that kind of stuff, but I didn't have any interest. So kind of just, I then started associating it with like money, and it was kind of like, that's not what I'm interested, whatever. And then I seen a few kind of documentaries on the BBC, which had kind of debunked an awful lot of this kind of stuff. And on a different day that could have been fine, and I did mine, but it was just I need to put this away for a while. And then there was kind of a period then of big upheaval in my life with loads of different things, where I left jobs I had been doing for a long while. Got out of it. My friend circle changed dramatically. Well, I left most of my friends and just moved out into different things. So there seemed to be a whole kind of clearing thing going on there. And then there's a couple of years in the wilderness. And then I wanted to come back and I wanted to start talking about the stuff, because I had started getting back in thinking about these things. And it was kind of the catalyst for that, of all things, was The Secret, that kind of the infamous law of attraction documentary that changed the world.
Yeah,
not necessarily for good at all, but it was a thing that kind of went, oh yeah, I forgot I used to be into all of those type of things. And so it all came back really, really quick, and I very quickly found chaos magic then at that point. And that was when people say, oh, I found home or whatever, I knew where he's meant to be. There, and now I understand what people talk about when they say that. And
Did
then
you find it was kind of like a rediscovery? Did you feel something that was
no, not really.
new?
Well, you
No.
see, I don't know. It's kind of I don't know that. Like, I mean, when people say that,
Yeah.
it certainly felt that, but I don't know if that's the exact right word. It felt
Yeah.
right. It felt, oh, this is what I'm looking for, rather than all the years going
Resonated.
through, like saying, even though as much as I love Alan Watson, you know, praise the man and all that, I didn't get the same kind of. It was like, oh, that's very interesting, and I learn a lot from you, but you know, it's not home or whatever. That kind of, it's just that
I
not
know
where
what you
I'm
mean.
going to finally situate myself. Maybe Chaos Magic isn't where I finally situate myself, but it's certainly for this block of time is, you know, where I'm at.
Well, I would just interject there, if I may,
Yeah.
Tommy, because I've just made another little note, and I think it's nice because you basically say, like, you don't represent any of those single topics that were mentioned earlier, and
No, no.
you're very much like myself. It's all about sharing kind of just your experiences, your thoughts, your opinions, and your insights. And, you know, we're all just kind of, as I think Ramdas said, we're all just walking each other home, right? And that's all it is. We're just kind of on the shoulders of giants and
Yeah,
progressing and trying to
exactly
help
that.
each
And
other.
the thing about Chaos Magic, I think why I like it is that it's, well, it's meant to be this whole idea of no dogma, of, you know, subjective experience is the important experience. Proof is your own proof, and kind of the whole thing of nothing is true, everything is permitted. What I get from that is that your experience of it is the thing that's important, not necessarily capital T truth, whether that even exists or not. Anyway, you know, like at the end of the day, can you really disprove solipsism? I can't, but you know, it's also this, you know, you can't prove it or disprove it. So from a science point of view, it's kind of, you know, you have to dismiss it in a way, because it's, you know,
Follow
unless
the
something can be
solipsism.
falsifiable, then, you know, it's not. But the kind of the Chaos Magic thing. So it was more the ethos of it I liked, rather than trying to join a religion. It's not like you know, I finally found my right church or, you know, like, or my social group or something. It's just going, I can come from that base of thought and then explore everywhere, you know. So it's unlimited where you can go. Whether if you say get into Buddhism, there's a very set constraint of where you can kind of, you know, situate yourself in that kind of thing. Whereas you don't have that with Chaos Magic. In general, people do like their boundaries and kind of bring that in, and there is all that kind of stuff. And even reading something like Liber Null, which is Pete Carroll's book, which kind of more or less kicked off the whole Chaos Magic thing in the late 70s, is full of dogma, which is strange when you look back on it now, which the whole idea was to get away from that. But, you know, it's like, it seems to be something that we like doing. So we like having
I think
rules.
human beings are generally hardwired for this kind of stuff, aren't they? So it seems the kind of.
It seems to be. It's just the time and place that we find ourselves, you know, that as Gordon White, who some people know from RuneSip, he would say, you know, it's just this point in the timeline. That's who we are. That's what we're doing. That's what's.
It's all programming, isn't it? Essentially, you know.
It is, like, to a large extent, like the social kind of constructs that we have, and you know, and that, like, people are becoming quite aware of all of them things, but they've always been about. You know, it's not anything new or whatever. It's just every now and again we kind of look at them and go, maybe we shouldn't have them. Maybe they're not real. It's like that whole thing of that when you think of a thought you've had your entire life, and then you question it someday and go, do I actually even believe that? And then you realize that it's not your thought. It's probably, it's your mum's thought, you know.
That's
and it mightn't
right.
even have been her thought. She got it from someone else, whatever. And it's just this unquestionable kind of train of rules that, you know, that have come down through the generations.
Yeah, we're trying to kind of break away from all that programming, and it's kind of that programming that, you know, I had to kind of revisit my perception of what I thought was magic, because, you know, magic has been very much poo-pooed, you know, whatever you want to go back to, like the Crusades or what have you, when, you know, anyone who wasn't toeing that line were all just kind of exterminated, essentially. And some of those genetics have kind of managed to flow through, and arguably you could say people like us might be carrying a little bit of those genetics, which is kind of what sparked that interest to kind of get into these things. And yeah, as I was saying, like, you know, my perception of magic, it was kind of, as you say, in the dogma and in these kind of almost childish perceptions, very much kind of archetypical, but, you know, from the Disney programming and all that kind of stuff. But I think from what I got I read the Arch Traitor Blue Fluke, what's it called, the Chaos Magic Manual, and essentially I think for me what it boils down to is just we are beings that can manifest, and you don't need all the hullabaloo with all the kind of the cape and the amulets and all the rest. It is just about
but the other side of that, is it's okay to have the cape and the amulets and do all that if that works for you. And there's a case to be made that that maybe sometimes that is important. Like, I mean, that's a very odd thing for a case magician to say. And I mean that in a kind of objective reality way. Maybe it is important because what it becomes a bit clearer the more magic you do and the more kind of introspection and all that kind of stuff is that what you think you know about yourself and about what you want and what you want out of life, or what all that thing is, you find as you go along is that you're not the best judge of that necessarily. And so that's not to say that, you know, give over your power to, you know, whatever, you know, the political leaders or anything, or religious thing. But there is a kind of an idea that sometimes that these things that are traditional or whatever, that you should look at them and maybe spend some time with them, because at one point someone found this very helpful enough that they wrote it down in a book in very precise ways. And rather than just immediately just going, well, that's a load of rubbish, try it. And before, you know, you dismiss any of these things, before you dismiss the robes or dismiss the, you know, the circles, whatever, try it as described at least once. And then you might go, wow, it is rubbish. Fine, but at least you've tried it as described, you know, and don't just rely totally on yourself, even as a chaos magician, because, you know, it's like looking back at yourself 10 years ago and going, well, you didn't really know what you thought, you know.
Yeah.
And so thinking that over, you know, vast eons of time, and
yeah.
Someone, you know, that you can.
Are you familiar with morphic resonance, Tommie?
Yeah, Rupert Sheldrake's idea.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So a quick analogy then. So for example, when they were synthesizing molecules for the first time, crystals, very difficult the first times, but the more they did, the easier it became. And then this is the theory of morphic resonance. You can look more into that with Rupert Sheldrake if you're not familiar with it. And this is all to do with how things are essentially kind of grown to blueprints, energetic blueprints. That's very simplistic, crude explanation.
A good way of looking at it is that rather than saying that you have universal laws, that the world works on habit, or you know, like in the same way that your brain wires itself because of familiarity, like that whatever questions.
So the point I wanted to make off the back of that was then basically what you're saying about the traditional stuff, and forgive me if I didn't mean to kind of come across I was poo-pooing it, but it's...
No, I didn't think you were. I just, it's a thing that people do, though. That's it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you, Tommie. I was just going to say, though, do you think that same principle applies where these kind of... I was talking to Dr. Wong about egregores and these kind of, when these practices have been done over and over and over to achieve whatever it is that they do achieve, and there's different things, different purposes to achieve different things, that do you think there's that element of morphic resonance as well that comes into play with regards to kind of ceremony and ritual?
Yeah, it would certainly seem so. Like, I mean, whether or not Jesus existed as a person, he certainly does now, you know, and that's like a kind of, whatever way you want to take it, like if you want to take literal Jesus, good on you. If you want to take it as an egregore, he displays all the properties of an egregore. So like, you know, there's that kind of, or any of those things, like it's, if the universe works on the basis of habit, and it seems to, at least in part, then that would be another kind of reason why you shouldn't dismiss tradition, or it's also, don't put it on a pedestal either. Like, it's still people who are doing it and trying things out. Or still the kind of the same approach to, you know, trying to work out what it all is. And a kind of a very kind of, I don't know, an aversion to the kind of sentiment of, you know, I know everything, or that kind of, you know, a tradition that seems to have feel that it knows what the universe is about. That instantly kind of to walk away from that. But if you approach it from a point of view that everyone was having a go, or everyone, and people, in the sense that you are further along the path than you were 10 years ago, say, people have been further along the path than you have been, and probably know a bit more than you. Some of them don't, but, you know, test it out yourself. That's what's in it. It's the thing about the chaos magic is to, you know, test these things. And that was what the whole point of the Adventures in Woo Woo, setting up that the website, was to go, rather than just, you know, just accepting these ideas or pushing them away or whatever, look at them and see, and not even are they true, you know, not is it objectively true, is magic real and all that. Is it useful? It's the more important thing. Like, whether magic is real or not, incidental to, is it useful to you? You know, if you act as if it's real, do you get the results you want? And people do, like not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time. And there's more factors into it, it's a lot, all of that kind of, than just doing a sigil and go, well, why didn't that work? Well, there's a whole lot of things going on. It's not just that Magick doesn't work,
Yes, this is it, and you just have to be open to the experience, and I think the more open you are, the more likely these things will manifest for you. And
what sort of Magick experience have you? What sort of stuff have you done, or what's your?
Practically, I wouldn't say anything. So
okay.
I'm just more theoretical. So I've kind of, and again, I've not, I can't profess to have any kind of deep knowledge. I'm kind of like yourself. I get into a bit of everything, but I understand the principle of the egregores. I understand where, unfortunately, due to my path, being in prison, and then it's just discovering this whole, and unfortunately, is something that's come up, and this is something we've all discovered, is this dark side of society with this whole paedophilia stuff, and this stuff goes back a long way, and it's all this rituals, and it's dark, and it's, so that's my kind of was my into it. And then obviously, as you say, there's two sides to everything. You've got the light and the dark, and as you said there about, does it work? There's not so much, is it real? And that's kind of analogous to people who have kind of entity contact with entheogenic experiences, and whether you want to argue that they are contacting entities inhabiting kind of inner space, or whether that's just archetypes of the subconscious. It doesn't matter if it's a positive experience and it's having a positive effect on your life, then,
or a negative experience,
or a negative one,
or a negative experience. It's even a negative experience is more kind of, is it real or not? Doesn't matter. If you have a negative trip on mushrooms, it doesn't matter if it's real or not. That you're definitely going to act as if it's real. So
that's it, exactly. Yes, and this is where we've come to now with regards to technology, being able to induce these kind of altered states of consciousness using the hypnagogic light machines and things like that, which is a kind of fascinating prospect where we're able to kind of shortcut these where the traditional methods, and as you say, once you're in for the ride with these kind of entheogenic substances, that's it, you're in for the ride. But with these technologies and these lights and stuff, you can go in as deep as you like and pop back out as quickly as you like if it becomes, unpleasant, which is
the only kind of rebuttal, I suppose, to the ease at which we can get into these things now is that Jung's kind of warning of, be aware of unearned wisdom, that you can throw yourself into things like, particularly on some sort of psilocybin trip or something, or an LSD trip, or ayahuasca, or any of these things. You can get into territory you probably mightn't be ready for, and sometimes that's great. That's a catalyst for getting you into the next thing. Sometimes that's just going to wipe you out, and just be very careful. And while it's all great that there's this move to decriminalize psilocybin and stuff, and you have that in Canada and stuff. Great, but also it's not a safe drug. In the same way, when people go, "Is Magick safe to use?" It's terribly not safe, but it shouldn't be. That's the point of it. But it's also don't go in kind of naively into any of these things. Like it can fuck you up, and it's simple. And like there's not, that's across the board on any of these things. While they're great or whatever, they need a bit of kind of reverence and a bit of keeping it in the kind of place where it needs to be, that it's not, like, I suppose it's that whole thing of that, particularly with the LSD and that stuff, that it was a party drug. You get that less so with, say, DMT and ayahuasca and stuff like that, just because it wasn't available for people to party with it. I'm sure it will, though. I'm sure that'll change a bit. And you do kind of see, Reddit forums where people are just kind of party drugging DMT, and you're going like, that's crazy. Like that's, but and like we, do it, everyone should do it the month and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't think that it's the safest route, or that it's not that it's the safest route. It doesn't come with any risks. That's what I mean.
This is it. This is it. Yeah. And as I say, we always kind of promote safety and testing and awareness and all this kind of stuff, because for every awesome positive experience you hear about, you can guarantee there's one right on the other end of the spectrum. And as you say, these are kind of like using a crowbar sometimes to break into a door, when really you should have been taking some time to fashion a key, and all these kind of analogies, because this is where we need to kind of be repurposing systems and facilities for people to be able to kind of explore these kind of experiences, but in a safe and productive setting. As you said, it's the same with the magic. There's so much more to the universe than we kind of really know or we're taught, and then you kind of getting into these other levels. And as you say, yes, it is a territory that needs to be respected, that it's only fools rush in and all that kind of stuff. Because
yeah, that's it. And again, then the correlation with magic and the testing it and always be testing and all that. The importance then of your magical diary, that is, is people. All traditions of magic kind of state just how important it is, and it's the first thing people decide they're not going to do. Just not to keep record. And it's like the aim of religion, the method of science, and that's Crowley's thing about what your approach to magic should be. And while of course, magic isn't science. You can science also isn't a philosophy. It's a method. It's not. It's become scientism. And it has become a kind of a religion in itself. In some quarters, not always. Like it's easy to paint everyone with scientism. And but the magical diary is hugely important, and particularly when you start trying to work out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, where did the insights come. And when things go right, you can look at it and go, well, it went right because of this. And when things go wrong, you can go back and look at it. And it's an awful lot of these kind of insights with regards to magic. And magic, in a sense, I'm also saying alchemy, like shadow work. And I would put all that together, like you're, rather than just there's two kind of things to magic, I suppose. There's getting the stuff, getting the money, the love, the cars, all that law of attraction kind of stuff. But there's also the transformative stuff where you become, the better person, the greater person. In the New Age term, you're aiming towards the ascended master or whatever it is that, but you're trying to, the alchemical thing of, turning yourself from shit into gold, in that kind of thing. And so a lot of the stuff that, unless you take notes of these things or whatever, the insights that come with it don't really become apparent until much, much later. And it's like a dream diary. And if you have a dream, you don't write it down or you don't tell someone straight away, it's gone, and you kind of, and things change, yourself, memories change, that you could go, well, I did a sigil for this and this happened. And then when you're telling the story 3 months later, it's slightly different, but it seems the truth to you, because, what the way memory works is, rather than you're remembering the incident, you're remembering the last time you remembered the incident. So the more times you use it, the more time it degrades over the whole thing. And the other thing with magic is this idea that once you get what you want, once your magical desire has materialized, the universe, or whatever words we want to use for it, consciousness, will normalize the experience to make it seem non-magical, because it's the whole idea of it that if it's out in the open and all that kind of thing, it kind of takes the sheen off, kind of takes the magic out of it, the enchantment away of it. And we don't really live fully in a magical kind of universe. We live in a kind of right now in a kind of a rational kind of thing. And so we want to kind of make it non-magical. And it's important, I think, to, if you do magic and get your desire, to acknowledge that it was that magic, even though it might appear that it's most normal, mundane kind of things. That was one thing that Anton LaVey said, the guy who started the Church of Satan and did the Satanic Bible. And people can take or leave him in whatever way you want. But one of his kind of, I don't know if it's is it the commandments, or one of his things is that if you get something from magic, acknowledge the magic or it's taken away. And I don't think he meant taken away in that if you get a car using magic and then you don't acknowledge the magic, that someone's come and takes your car away. Yeah. Someone comes and takes your magic away. And the more that you acknowledge the magic, the more enchanted world you live in, the more magic you live in.
Like gratitude, isn't it?
It is. It's exactly the same kind of principle of that. It's like all of these words are, very synonymous, and they're all kind of the same. It's just points at a slightly different kind of side of it, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that, because that's what it is. It's a feed. It's an interactive universe. It seems magic in the mundane and all this kind of stuff. And I talked to Dr. Wong about that, where I kind of sectioned, and my universe just kind of cracked, and it was just constant. And maybe if I'd been a few years ago, it might have been a little bit frightening, but I was just enjoying it. And I was like, what is going on? And it was just, it was quite almost like a trip, really. And I kind of realized while I was in it, this is how it's supposed to be all the time. Like, your universe is supposed to be, you think, and the universe interacts with it in real time. And it was quite a bizarre experience, but yeah, I think that's where we kind of, we were.
And why do you think it doesn't happen like that? Like, obviously that didn't continue.
The programming, the rationalization, the programming, the synchronicities, and then there's synchronicities, there's, there's a little synchronicity, and then there's like, boom, in your face, like, oh, I can't even begin to try and explain that one. And that's when, you know, the universe is kind of throwing you a crumb, giving you a wink, however you want to look at it. And yeah. But I also, though, there is this other kind of alternative thread of, and I'm not sure where you sit on this one, about possibly synchronicities being the AI keeping us on our path. Again,
yeah, well, I suppose it all depends on what model of magic of the universe or existence you want to, like, there's any number of them. And the thing about, I suppose, chaos magic is you can weave your way through them. So, like, you can have the psychological model, which is all in your head. Yeah. You could have the information model, which is kind of close to, you know, the matrix kind of thing. But, you know, you have the consciousness model, which is like idealism or solipsism, I suppose, in a sense. You know, that you're in a field of consciousness, like a point of consciousness within a greater kind of thing, which is also matrixy. You have animism, which is like the haunted universe. You know, everything has its own kind of personhood or soul or agency, in a sense, even things that to us don't appear. So it really all depends, I suppose, what way you want to look at it. And it could be, probably is, none of those things, or a form of all of those things, or maybe it's malleable and it changes. You know, like, if today, that whole thing of, you know, that things you need an observer, not all that quantum physics stuff. And every time anyone mentions quantum physics in regard to magic or spirituality, I tend to switch off, because it's like you get very quick into Deepak Chopra territory, and no one should go there. But it's like that the observe thing. So, like, if you observe a model of, or an idea of how the universe works, does it then kind of take on that form a bit, even in a subjective kind of thing, which is what I'm mostly interested in? So even your idea of how the universe works probably changes how the universe works.
I think you're right there. As you say, we do create it. So as you say, your thoughts will have that influence of how you see it. And it's funny because, you know, in this conversation, we're talking in language with regards to chaos magic and manifestation, but then other people I've spoken to my mind, maybe not to other people, are saying pretty much the same thing, but just in a different language, where they're talking about just programming. This is a holographic universe, if you want to put it. This is what the quantum languages tell us. And again, we are creating ourselves a model there, which we have to kind of operate within. But in the holographic universe, this does then make all these kind of whatever you want to call them, supernatural, paranormal phenomena explainable. And then you say with magic, then is essentially just kind of hacking the code in, where people are able to do things which defy conventional understanding. So I think we're all just coming, there's all these kind of ancient knowledge, new knowledge, ancient wisdom rather, and new knowledge, and it's all just kind of coming together. And like, you know, Seth, I suppose, I talks about is weaving the cosmic tapestry. You know, it is just all these different things I think are coming together and complementing each other quite a lot of the time, or helping people to evolve their understanding in different fields by using kind of different terminology, you know.
So what do you think is the ultimate thing that will happen out of that convergence? Like, where do you think it's going, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is, we look at it, if you do enough research, you see the world's in a shitty old state, but at the same time, there's some awesome stuff going on as well. And I think it's about this, it's a crossroads, I think. We've seen that society is reset, or there's been cataclysms 5 times according to the, you know, the research, and I think we've come into a point where we're going to go one way or the other. Like the whole thing of the, you know, the holographic universe, simulated matrix universe is an explanation, and it does allow you to kind of understand certain things. But to me, that's just, it doesn't explain. We're just another level out of explaining things, because you've got that infinite regress. Oh, okay, cool, right, this is a simulator. When we get outside of the simulator, what's the with regards to what's going on here right now, though, people are talking about it as this change to a service-based economy, rather than all this kind of, you know, all these different models that they work in, and these different kind of, all around the world, they're trying all these different models and seeing what works. And the Chinese model seems to be what is kind of the leading edge, UN awards and all this kind of stuff, social credit and all the rest of it. We can see where they want to kind of lead us. Speaking to Carl H. Smith, he's the director of the Learning Research Institute in London, talking about, you know, he can see where it's going with tech, but he wants us to, you know, talk about retaining our analog sovereignty, you know, our analog bodies. You know, they're kind of talking about mandating vaccines, you know, when they start mandating technology and chip in and all this kind of stuff, we're entering into territories then where there's no coming back from that kind of stuff. So unity is the one thing, Tommie. That's my main thing. It's kind of, as you've seen from the channel, it's quite a diverse range of information. I'm hoping people people who know your stuff will go, oh, cool little conversation with Tommie, come and have a little look, see, oh, you know, little bits and bobs. And I think because to understand what's going on, you do need to know, you have to look at all of it, you know, and it's kind of the new age thing of, oh, don't look at the dark because you're feeding it the energy and all this kind of stuff. And obviously you have to have a balance, I think, but you do, I feel personally, you need to have a bit of knowledge about everything to kind of grasp that bigger picture. And yeah, essentially, I think it's only if we do unite, then we can work towards a service-based kind of society where
that's what your utopia is like a service-based kind of.
Yeah, essentially, where everyone can just kind of, it's kind of that Ubuntu principle, isn't it? Whatever, you know, you do you, self-actualization, whatever you want to do, as long as you're working in harmony.
The only kind of problem I have that, and I'm sure you have that. Who is the person taking out the trash? Who's the person doing the shitty jobs?
Well, this is it. I think, like, I was chatting to a lovely fella from New Zealand the other day, and you know, we talked about everyone saying, like, get rid of the government, get rid of the government. The government has just been corrupted. When you actually look at the systems and what's been said, it does work if it's used in the correct way, but it's just been corrupted from a small core. And I think this is where he was talking about, in terms, you know, Mark Passio saying about, you know, there's good people in the police, the military, they need to get out. Well, no, in actual fact, it does seem to be that you do need good people there to kind of, because if there are no good people in there, then there is going to be no recourse. So, yeah, I'm not unrealistic about these things. As you say, you know, there does need to be a massive shift in kind of perception and consciousness, a bit more kind of raising and whatnot. But, you know, as you say, we do need to be realistic and kind of structure these things. So some people are happy to just kind of, for some people, like, I'm always just wanting to learn more. Every day is a school day, and I just want to keep. And then other people are happy to just kind of just plod on in life, I suppose, if you want to put it like that. So it's kind of, you know, it's like Frome in England. Frome have got all independent counsellors, all 18 of them. Yeah, so what they've got there is a nice little system where it's very, very cohesive within the community, and everyone comes and puts their ideas forward, and they, you know, they divide the cash up equally for what is deemed to be the most kind of deserving projects and all the rest of it. So I think what we've got in place, all the stuff is kind of there. Just a lot of stuff needs to be restructured, you know. When you say about who wants to take out the trash, we create way more trash than we ever really need to as well.
Sure, yeah. So it's not who takes out the trash. We have a look at why we have trash.
Exactly, yeah. Right. Yeah. All these other things as well, yeah.
So would you consider yourself an optimist or a pessimist when it comes to the next 50 years?
Well, to be honest with you, I flip to each side of the coin multiple times a day. You know, it's one of them. Sometimes I think, I wouldn't mind seeing a good cataclysm. Want to be one of the survivors, you know? As long as there's not Terminators flying around trying to round us all up. I jest, of course, you know. I am optimistic. There's just, the way it seems is there's a corrupt little core that's done very well. Seems to be for quite a long time. I've got this system locked down almost, but it's far more of us. It's got to go one way or the other. It does seem to be like people are kind of, I call it the spectrum of awakening, all this woke stuff. I'm not down with all that. It's just there's a spectrum of awakening, and, you know, some people come onto different things that kind of make them question their reality. They're, as you say, why do I think that? Is that really my thought? No, actually, I don't actually think that. And then, as you say, the more you look on the flip side to that, the more you learn, the less you know. So it's kind of,
well, that seems to be the thing. The more you know, the less you know. The more you know that you don't know, all that kind of stuff. That's it. And as you say, I'm not sure what the ultimate purpose of this experience is. This is another thing. I've always been just always questioning it. And I like the fact, you know, it's kind of lucky or nice for you that you had that kind of mentor figure as a younger man, because you know, it's the difference between, you know, like the shamanic, the tribal kind of peoples. Nowadays it's ADHD. You're showing them kind of signs. Medication, ADHD, but in these tribals, you'd be recognized and you'd be kind of nurtured and you'd be taken down that path, because everyone's different. And I say everyone has their own kind of way in life. And yeah, I think everyone. And the school system we have is designed to make factory workers.
Yeah, soul destroying, soul and mind destroying.
So, like, it's, you know, if you're any kind of way, like that whole thing, you know, people go, oh, he's really intelligent, or not academically intelligent, really, and it's kind of like, well, you know, we should really look at that and have you know, systems in places where people, I don't know, I mean, if you want to, you know, expand in a different way, you should be able to. But it's like that. How do you do that practically too, as well? You know, like there's so many of us. There's so much thing. There's only so much you can do. I'm not saying that the school system isn't. You know, I hated school, but I really didn't fit in. But we definitely could be doing better on that, and not try to make drones as is what we're doing with kids now. Like, and what certainly what we're trying to do when I was at school and stuff like that. Like it gets better and better, and slowly, and so, you know, every generation seems to have it slightly a bit more, in one sense, but freer in one sense, and, you know, really not free in other places too. You know, so there's kind of the balance. But I'd be the same as you. I don't know what ultimately, you know, I was going to say the point of all this, but I don't know where it's going. I don't know what the game plan is. I don't really know what the game is. You know, it's like hard to kind of know what the solution or the end of the game is, the resolution of the game is, when you're not really sure what the rules are, when you're not really sure what the actual game is, or is it a game? You know, there's still just that kind of thought at the back of your mind going, no, that just kind of happened for no reason, you know, which is like, really? You know, and just because I don't like that idea, it doesn't preclude the fact that it might be true. You know, we have a kind of a thing in spirituality, which I've noticed a lot recently, is that we think that if we don't like an idea, then it can't be true. You know, like the thing where you're talking about the New Age people and they're like, don't look at the darkness. You know, it's a form of that, where just because something is unfair, just because something is, you know, not what we want, whatever, doesn't mean that that's not truth. And people tend to attack people who point out truth in certain situations. Offhand, you know, any day you'll see it any day, like someone say, and they're going, you're attacked, and the person gets attacked, you know, this kind of thing. You're going, just because it's you know, we don't like it doesn't mean we have to ignore it, or you know, dismiss it, or say that's awful. But like, who would we say? It's like giving it about the weather. They really should do something about the weather. Who and what can they do? You know, it's just the nature of where we live, you know, or the planet we're on, and all these things. And there's some things about this place and this experience that are unpleasant, that aren't nice, and we can't, until I think as a society we kind of get to the point where we're able to cope with the fact that it's unfair, or that, you know, these things, it isn't exactly the way we want it to be. I think we'll get on, but that's looking at the shadow, that's looking at the dark side, that's looking at all those things. You know, we don't want to do that. But what I found is that when you start doing that, and as hard as that is, your life changes very quickly, and you move along, and things where you were stuck and all that open up in different areas, which is very weird, in that if you have, say, as an example, you have a problem relationship with someone, say at work, and it's, you know, it's really causing tension, whatever, and you solve that, that seems to have an impact over here, say on your finances, you know, that's not related to work, or your family, or, you know, your exercise. There seems to be, in that kind of new age thing of, you know, you have to let the flow, man. You have to go through. You have to, you know, there's an energy block. But it's definitely, in my experience, having worked on certain shadow aspects, that the biggest surprise out of it is not that that particular shadow thing becomes resolved, but other things become loosened out because of it, as if a tightening in one area tightens the whole thing. But I suppose if it is holographic, every little piece contains the entire part. So pushing one bit is going to push the other bits. Like.
That's it. It's all connected, isn't it? And I think they talk about it in terms of like creating a space. So if you're holding on to something or whatever it is, once that's resolved, you create a space then for something else to fill. And
that's true as well. Yeah.
All this kind of stuff. Yeah, which kind of, it all makes perfect sense. I had an absolutely crack of a question for them. It's completely gone, but I'm sure it'll come back to me shortly. You know,
one thing is kind of to that as well, and doing shadow work as well. When people say,
that's what I was going to ask. Go on, yeah.
When people say, my magic doesn't work. Well, you know, why is that? Whatever. And I had a period of time, but certainly when I was getting into magic as well, there seems to be a bit, when you get into magic, you get a pass for a while where everything works, where your sigils work, where your manifestation works, whatever it is you're working on, where you call up the demon from the Goetia and he arrives, and then none of it works. It's like as if at the beginning you're kind of going, well, you set you up, and then for whatever reason it all goes away. And it's so prevalent and it's so widely reported that it seems to be that's a thing that happens. But I think it's just kind of giving you the kind of incentive to do the work. You know, gives you a slight reward, and then go, right, now go off and do the work. And the work is the shadow work. So when I got into that kind of the middle bit, where it was like, Magick wasn't working. I was looking around different groups that I was in, and like everyone was talking about the, the great magical results they were getting. And I kind of felt like I was on the outside of this kind of party, looking in the window at all these people at this, having a great time with Magick. One thing is people talk a lot of shit, report things that aren't really happening. So, take everything with a pinch of salt. But, people do get, you do well with Magick and all that kind of thing. So I was looking at, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with me. Like I don't think I'm special in the negative sense, that I don't think that there's, there's something blocking me personally at Magick. There's obviously something I'm doing wrong. If people are reporting all of these things, then I should be able to do that too. That's the kind of approach of a chaos magician. You can do it. I can definitely do some sort of version of it too. So what it seemed to be is that why Magick didn't work for me is because I had to start doing this shadow work. I had to start doing these things, so that it's easy to go do a sigil, which is just like a condensed glyph or pictorial representation of a desire you have. And for, 50 quid, and then go, I didn't get my 50 quid, Magick doesn't work. But there's a whole host of things going on with that, like about your ideas around self-worth, around prosperity, around money. And people, we have huge things around money. So doing a sigil for 50 quid without kind of looking at all of those other things, it's kind of in a sense setting yourself up for failure. And the first thing people do when they get into Magick is to go, oh, well, I can win the lottery. And well, highly unlikely you're going to win the lottery, because it seems that at least in some part, Magick is probability enhancement, or, you're working in that way. So if winning the lottery is, your chance are 1 trillion to 1, it's now 1 billion to 1. Your Magick worked. You still haven't won the lottery though, but you've increased your chances of doing it.
Yeah.
But even apart from all that, if your Magick's not working in a particular area, and you'll find that with people as well, that they'll be all great, their love Magick or their relationship Magick or whatever they're working on is perfect, but their money is, dire, and they just can't do it, or they're getting great meditations, getting in great trances, great revelations, but their work life is a mess. They'll seem, there'll be some part that's kind of, no, and that's, they'll be going, well, Magick doesn't work, because that's the place where you have to work on. And that form of shadow work, and when you do the introspection and you go through that, and when it's sadly, it's the thing is when you just realize how much of an asshole you are, that it's just in that particular area, and when you realize it, it's like, oh, it's a nightmare, but at the same time, it's an unbelievable release that you go, oh, well, I don't have to do that anymore. It's like, it has that kind of double thing. When you start doing that and you start working through that, and that's a huge process. And like, I mean, you're going to be doing that for the rest of your life. The Magick stuff things start coming in, and they start kind of working to a point that places where you had kind of obstructions, or it wasn't flowing, just kind of naturally do it, so that you, rather than say, if you're constantly doing Magick to get your rent paid or your mortgage paid or whatever it is, that when you start working around these things, you'll notice that that sort of just kind of happens on its own. It kind of works away on its own, and it's like the most important thing, I would say, out of anything, and it's more kind of in a sense alchemy than magic, but it's all thing is this shadow work and working on yourself. And it's what we're doing, individually, and we have to work on that on a bigger scale, locally, community wise, country wise, globally.
Well, yeah, thank you, Tommie. I appreciate that. And the way I see it is, when I kind of had a bit of a realization a few years ago of if we come to the understanding that we are all just one consciousness, kind of split amongst all these avatars, this is kind of an understanding, and that, if we are all one, then anything anyone else is doing, good or bad, I'm capable of doing too. So it's this kind of, the shadow work then is kind of realizing, God, there's some dark things going on in the world, and if everyone is a brother and everyone is a reflection of self and all this kind of stuff, it was kind of, one of the kind of, certain things in your life that kind of change your thoughts kind of process, and you kind of realize that it's only through working then individually on our own kind of shadow and self to kind of get that balance, that hopefully that fuels the kind of collective healing, or if you want to call it that kind of, I'm not too sure. But where is a good place would you recommend, Tommie, for people to start with regards to perhaps literature, or kind of if they want to kind of come into this for the first time, this kind of shadow work? And do you get into the kind of inner child kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, it's all part of, like, the person to go to and all that is Jung, but but he's very hard to get into. Like, there's no point in, if you haven't done any of this stuff before, to go, go read some Jung. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah. Go read someone talking about Jung for a while, you know. I mean, as much as he kind of, people have issues with, like, say, someone like Jordan Peterson and that kind of stuff, and not getting into that whole thing. Something like that, where someone who, like, he's a whole series of videos where he talks about Jung, you know, find some, if Jordan Peterson's not for you, and I know he's not from a lot of people, find someone doing the equivalent. There's a guy as well, there's Pierre Grimes has like thousands of video on YouTube, and he's like the Noetic Society, and he's loads of like, you know, philosophy stuff and all that, but he has this kind of, there's a shadow work element to it as well. There's that kind of stuff. There's Alan Chapman stuff that I definitely think people should check out. And he's a guy who wrote Advanced Magic for Beginners, which would be a well-known kind of chaos magic book. And he had a blog with a guy called Duncan Barford, and he did it for like nearly 10 years. It was called The Baptist Head. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all,
No.
but that was you know, be very well known, and he's done a lot of kind of stuff since. But he's recently set up a website called Magia, and it's MAGIA teaching.org. I'll send you the link anyway, so you can put it in the
Awesome, yeah, I'll put all the links in the description
and
box.
he has a whole thing about shadow work, though he wouldn't call it, he calls it unbinding and binding, where you look at, well, there's meditative practices where you have different kind, where you you know, you're working on expansion, say, and then you have the other stuff where you're looking at where you're contractors and trying to get rid of that, and that would be the binding things. But it's where seeing it through the kind of analogy of a tree, where you have, you know, your branches, your roots and your seed, and looking at kind of different roles that you've played in your life, or looking at different situations in your life and trying to get it back to the original kind of place where that started, where there was, in a sense, a transmission of this role from whence you started playing that role.
Yeah.
It's usually something in early childhood up until kind of teenage years, less so as you get older, because it needs this transmission of role needs you to be in a certain state where you are receptive and you're able to believe something from an authority figure, be that a parent, a teacher, you know, a compatriot, you know, but who that you look up to, you know, like the older boys, or, you know, a sibling or something like that. And they, you know, they say something about the world, or they display some event, or they do something that you then take as a truth about how the world exists. That kind of thing. When we were talking about earlier, we're going, is that my thought or is that my mother's thought? And it's trying to find out the point when that happened. And in seeing that, it kind of diminishes it, and it kind of, in the sense of the old kind of magic thing of that, you know, like Rumpelstiltskin, as soon as you know its name, you have power over it. If you know, like, the biggest magical act is naming things, which is why science is so brilliant at binding, because it loves labeling and naming things, and then has control over it. For instance, like placebo, no one knows what that is, but we have a name for it now, and so we can put it in a box and either dismiss it or do it. We now have power over it by just having to name it. So finding these things, come back, and looking at the kind of seed where it started, naming it, finding its true name, and it's it's always the opposite of what you think it is. It's always kind of has this switcheroo thing going on that is quite bizarre and doesn't seem believable until you go through it a few times, and then you go, all right, that's what's going on. And every time then you go through it again, you go, no, that's definitely not. And then you get to the end, you go, all right, it is. You know, so that's his binding thing. He's an unbinding, binding, and the unbindings are these meditative practices, which are great as well. And they're all on that website. They're the audio lectures, and then there's the text as well. So from a magic point of view, I would say check that out first, because it's immediate, it's new, and you know, you can talk to Alan Chapman. You can't talk to Jung now, you know, and stuff. Well, you could get out your Ouija board and have it. But there's also loads of YouTube stuff as well. There's plenty. If you put in shadow work as well into YouTube, you're going to find, like, same as, you know, how to fix the tap, and you put it into YouTube, it's there. You know, has done it. But yeah, find someone who's talked about Jung before you get into Jung, or go to Alan Chapman, or spend some time on YouTube. But it's tough work. I mean, and don't get into it thinking it's not. It's hell. Like, I mean, and it should be hell, you know, because you're looking at stuff. Because you like to think you're a good person. Like, I assume everyone, even the bad guys of the bad guys, thought they were a good person, or at least doing right, given their circumstances, or, you know, whatever. So we don't like to be faced with the fact of our assholicness, that, you know, that we are, if not bad people in some sense, very capable of it. You know, that whole thing of that idea of that if we were all around in Nazi Germany and that was the conditions we had found ourselves in, most of us would be Nazis. And that's a horrible thing to, you know, and people would go, no, I would definitely wouldn't be. Well, most of us would. There's no, because most of them were, you know, yeah. And like you look at different, it's that society programming that we talked about earlier, right? You know, we're in Western, you know, in Western society, and that's, there's no point in saying that we're not, you know, that's what we grew up in, and that's how we look at it. And from people from the outside point of view, looking at that, have a much better appreciation of what we are than we have been within it, and looking at it. It's like the America, like, and the whole thing of like how, you know, how it's become the empire, how it's like the military bases all over the world. And like, because we see it's like how it's presented as, he's the good guy. America is the good guy. If you're not in that, that's a horrifying kind of a thing, you know. It is the empire, you know, the darkness, the kind of, but we're in it. You know, we're in the middle of it, so it's like, oh no, it's the Allies. You know, and that's not like, I mean, America has wonderful things too as well. I'm not painting it; it's not Satan, it's not all these things, but it definitely has a shadow element in the same way the UK has it. In the same way, you know, you can pick any country and it has it, you know, and it's thing. But it's very hard to see it when you're in the middle of it. At the minute, we seem to be seeing it a bit more than we did culturally.
Yeah.
Which is good, you know, and the shadow is rising. But when you attack the monster, it comes out worse. So I mean, there is a period of when you are doing shadow work that it's going to manifest in your life badly. You know, like if you're working on anger and you're looking through that, you're probably going to have a few situations where you get really angry. You know, and because it's that kind of it's not only just the trigger, but it's also the role, or the archetype, or whatever word you want to, is trying to defend itself. You know, it's trying to get away, you know, to stop you seeing it, stop you naming it, stop you looking at it.
Yeah.
So culturally, you can see that then when people start pointing at, you know, the shadow things, look at how angry the world is, you know, and then look how all the different shadow stuff is popping up, and people look at Twitter. I mean, Twitter is like just the epitome of the shadow of the world, you know?
Yeah.
Or Reddit, to say it. Yeah.
Well, I do quite like Reddit. I find Reddit's a lot more friendly than...
Reddit's my favorite of all of them.
I love Reddit. Reddit's great. And you mentioned solipsism, and I'm on all the kind of solipsism subreddits. And,
right, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's an idea.
It's just one guy, though.
This is it. But, you know, at the end of the day, we know nothing. We really don't know anything. So any option, as long as you're open-minded, and that's all I ever ask of anyone who I converse with, is just be open-minded. The minute you start saying, oh no, this can't be true, or that, you're just putting yourself in a bit of a box. And, you know, once
but
you're
also,
in your box,
we have to be careful of being open-minded too, in the sense of that some of what mainstream or mundane stuff is true, and it's not all, you know, just because not, you know, I can't think of an example. Like, it's not all a conspiracy. It's not all wrong. You know, capitalism, for all its faults, has done really well in different areas. Like, there's an awful lot less poor people in the world. There's still so many poor people and horrible things. You know, it's done well in different things, like, and it's done shitty in other things. But we kind of, I feel that sometimes, particularly if you hang out in our conspiracy, I'm sure you're aware of it anyway, if you're on Reddit and are into these things.
Yeah.
They go dark very quick, you know. And it's like, it's like not everything. I don't think that, you know, that t-shirt, everything is a conspiracy, possibly, but we have to be aware that it doesn't mean what we think it is. Like, we can be the conspiracy, you know. We can have it wrong, we can do it wrong, and it's just, I think it's all too easy just to have a worldview of them versus us, you know. And it's not always the case, because like, at the end of the day, one person in the room, you know, we are all the one consciousness. And there, if you kind of, I'm toying with this idea in Chaos Magic, you have this idea of paradigm shifting, which is you take a particular paradigm or idea about the world, or a model or a thing, and you just totally believe it and see how that changes your opinion of the world. And you have to totally believe it. It's not kind of half believing it. So it's taking some, like, you could do a kind of a case of, if you have a problem, see it through the eyes of, you know, what would someone else, how would Tony Robbins solve this problem, you know, whatever. But it's more than that. It's kind of looking at it through a completely different paradigm than you normally would. And what I'm kind of looking at now is this idea of predeterminism, that everything is happening exactly as there's no other way it couldn't have happened. It's like that thing in the second Matrix movie where she says to Neo, the Oracle says to Neo, you're not here to make decisions, you're here to witness decisions, or you're here to understand why you made them. You know, it's that kind of thing. And that, it kind of takes an awful lot of blame out of things. It kind of takes, you can't regret anything because there's no other way it could have been. You can't be prideful about anything because you haven't really achieved anything. You've just witnessed yourself doing things. And the kind of negative, I suppose, if you want, is that you can stop taking responsibility for bad things you've done or whatever. But it's an interesting kind of seat to sit in and look at the world, and it kind of distorts areas that you wouldn't normally have seen, or it kind of changes your different views, and it makes the whole thing, doing the paradigm shifting, it makes the whole thing a bit more malleable and a bit more not static. You know, it has this kind of, and so like taking a view that's completely different. So like spending some time totally believing conspiracies about everything, and then doing the opposite, be a complete conservative, you know, Tory, and look at it through the whole kind of thing, and see what areas of your life you change your mind about when you come back out of that. And you will, because you just have never viewed it from that point of view, particularly with different problems or different ideas or worldviews and stuff like that. It's a very interesting and powerful kind of course, you don't get stuck in them, you know, come back at the thing. But the secret is to really, you have to really believe it when you're doing it. You know, it's not kind of playing with the idea. It's and that's the hard bit. Like, I mean, that's obviously, it's hard to view the world from an opposite point of view of how you currently view it. But we are a collection of ideas. We are a collection of things we've read, things we've seen, interactions we've had with other people. The Buddhists would say that we don't really exist as a person, which I agree to a point. They would say there's no I behind the whole thing. I think there's probably an I behind it, just not it's not Tommie. You know, it's something.
Yeah.
But Theravada would say, no, there's nothing behind us. And so if we are only a collection of ideas, of books we've read, of interactions and all that, then why are they any more real than ones I deliberately take on? You know, if you go through life and are handed all of these things, but just walking around, taking on deliberately ones and say, oh, it's not really real, or, you know, that's not really believed. But listen, none of these things are, none of the things I believe are real. They're just, it's like, we have to take so much of knowledge for granted, because we're not going to do the study. Someone will, like, you know, you look at Jupiter exists and you go, right, fine. I've never personally seen it other than you know, kind of a thing, and go, well, there's all this scientific stuff. I'm sure there is. I don't have time to check that out. So you just take it for granted, or you take it on board. Go, right, someone did the work. And we do that with everything. So it's like, to then decide that you can have a belief rather than just be subjective to belief, you know, to be in the kind of atmosphere of given beliefs, whatever, is a very powerful tool. And that's the whole belief is a tool thing of Chaos Magic, where it's not just something that you have no control over, that you can deliberately cultivate a belief that either will be helpful in the moment for you or is helpful overall for you. Like, so, because nothing is true. Everything is permitted. And I find that very, very powerful. I don't know what your question was, but that's where we ended.
No, it's good. It's a nice little flow there, and I appreciate that. Well, you've sparked a thought for me, actually. Something I wanted to share with you, because you mentioned determinism.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so determinism is essentially that whilst it feels like free will, everything is predetermined and this is just an experience. And there are scientific studies that have shown where they're testing, I have to find it. I was trying to find it the other day, that essentially they were asking a question, but before the conscious mind kind of registered on the, whatever it was, the EEG, the subconscious had all, I can't remember how they were detecting it, but
it's the person was aware of seeing a pornographic photo before the pornographic photo was shown.
Right. Okay.
That had the reaction to the photo before they were shown the photo. I'm nearly sure that's in a Ripper Challenge.
I think that's what it is. And essentially, during my had a bit of a kind of shifting experience in 2017, and shortly afterwards a section that kind of became quite delusional and psychotic. But at one point during that, I had this realization that this was this deterministic kind of experience where, whilst it feels like this is my life and I'm making all these decisions, this is actually just an experience. So to evolve then from entertainment perspective of kind of theatre to movies to now we've got VR headset movies to eventually, however long it would take, that you're actually able to experience the movie, the experience through the avatar. And whilst this does feel like a kind of a free will experience, that doesn't answer any of the bigger pictures of what's outside of it or what created it or any of those kind of things. But it was this kind of, and again, I wasn't sure if I was just putting pieces of the puzzle that I've learned over the years together and making these kind of conclusions. But yeah, that was what it felt like. And you mentioned determinism there, so.
Well, the one thing about, the simulation theory that, Elon Musk has popularized and all that, among other people, but the thing that people don't seem to get about that is it's not the matrix. That's not what the simulation theory is. It's not that you are actually somewhere else plugged into this. It's you are the NPC. You are the program. You don't exist apart from the program. Like you are the character on the street in Grand Theft Auto 5. You know what I mean? Not someone, not the person playing the game. That's not what simulation theory is. That's more the matrix thing, whatever. So in that sense, it's completely predetermined because, you're like, you're a non-player character or whatever. That whole idea of non-player characters has become quite popular as well. But that's a bit insidious, I think. I mean, I understand why people have it, and you certainly feels that there's an awful lot of automatons going around, or as Stuart Wilde's guy was talking about at the beginning, but we called him Mechanical Man. I think he actually got that from Gurdjieff, though, so it mightn't necessarily be him. And so I can understand the principle, but it's all too easy then to dehumanize people and to, say something or not feel compassion, like you see some atrocity on the news, whatever. I'm sure that doesn't, that's all the matrix. That's not real. That didn't happen. In that it happened, it's real, but it's like there's no one suffering behind that. It's just a non-player character or whatever. And I think I don't think it's good. It's the same thing that you have in New Age circles as well, and in Magic circles. In that if you have this positive mental attitude and all these good things will happen to you, but if you get cancer, that's your fault because you didn't think right. You didn't you didn't have the happiest thoughts. You're full of regret or whatever it is that people say. And that's the victim blaming element of it. I don't find helpful because I don't think it's true. There's way too much going on. I think definitely your thoughts, and from a law of attraction point of view, if you engage with that, certainly works. Certainly you can have an impact, but I don't think it's the greatest impact. There's an awful lot more kind of things going on than just that. Did you ever hear of reality transurfing? Reality what? Transurfing. It's a Russian guy called Vadim Zeland, and it's kind of a cyberpunk version, I suppose, of the law of attraction. Okay. Yeah, and it's really good. And he has this idea in it of pendulums, which are almost like he would use the egregore in it as well, which is this kind of energy that is around certain events, situations, or things, and you get entrapped in these, and that they feed off you. There's an influence and all of those things, so it's very hard to work within these things. And an example would be your family unit, where it has a certain energy, its own egregore, and if you try to step outside of that, like say Christmas Day, and you decide to have 9/11 was an inside job, and your dad goes, "Oh, we don't have that. This is not what we do in this family." So if you try to step out the pendulum of that kind of thing, it's same like shadow work. There'll be a kind of a kickback. Kickback, exactly. So that while you can have all the law of attraction, positive thoughts you want, and certainly you will be having an impact on your different relationships and all that, there are all of these kind of pendulums walking around that you're interacting with that have equal and sometimes more power over you than you currently have, just because of the situation you're in, just because of your life, just because of society, and just because it's this point in the timeline, and that's the way the world is right now. And so it's too easy and nasty to say to someone, you have cancer because you had the wrong thoughts, or something bad has happened to you because you did, because you thought wrong and all that, those type of things. So it's just something to be. Yes, no, I appreciate that. Thank you, brother. And it's good to have, all the different perspectives, because as you say, you got to have that balance, and that's the most important thing, I think. And I wanted to ask you, if I may push you on something, and you may have an opinion on it, you may not, you probably will, I assume you will. Is this what I've discovered as I started looking into everything, but this whole, I suppose you have to call it a conspiracy theory, I guess, about, circle magic, where the circle is used to invoke and all the rest of it,
is now being kind of used technologically with CERN. What can I push you on this? Have you got an opinion on what kind of maybe
Well,
going on?
I haven't heard that. I know that.
Have you not heard that one? No, I
No,
was
I haven't heard
thinking
that. It's an interesting one. In that it's a circle too.
in
Like
that it's a
yeah,
circle and they're using
that's
the
interesting.
energy, and because
The thing
yeah,
I've heard most from CERN is that has kicked off the Mandela effect stuff. Yeah, which is
what was your
interesting.
first Mandela effect, brother?
It was to do with the Australian guy, host Clive, not Clive Anderson, Clive James.
Okay.
Yeah, he was
I'm
definitely
familiar
dead.
with this
I had
one.
a conversation with him and about him being dead, all that. And no, he's not. He's not dead, of course. That was my
That's
one.
bizarre. That's
Yeah.
bizarre. And I could tell you it was so powerful for me because I discovered it, the Mandela effect, 2016, 2017. But I actually remember the first time it happened to me was my mother used to buy us Disney videos.
Right.
And my sister's 4 years younger than me, and I put Snow White on, and she said, "Magic mirror on the wall." I must have been maybe 11.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, she never said that before. She always used to say, "Mirror, mirror." And I rewinded it and watched it again and thought, as you do, it was one of them things. But then to have that reminder, years later, I go, God, I remember it the first time around. And powerful for me then, Tommie, as you can appreciate. And
Yeah, for sure. Or the Tinkerbell, that the intro that we all
so
remember
many
doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's so many. Looney
CP3O's
Tunes.
Silver Leg.
What's your Looney Tunes memory? How was
Well,
Looney Tunes spelled?
It's TOONS.
Because it's short for cartoons. And I always remember thinking it when I first
also,
Looney
I've
Tunes.
been interested in the kind of thing with that. My dad was in a band when he was younger called the Looney Tunes, and they would call it the Looney Tunes, TUNES, because it was a band and music, and they had changed it from the cartoon to the thing. So
there we go. And as you say, it's unexplainable stuff, and it is mind-boggling. And I've heard all the theories, with CERN and all the rest of it, and we're looking into timelines and all that kind of stuff. And you can fall
an awful lot of it is though people misremembering things. Like it's not. I don't believe everything, but some of it isn't.
Some of it is unquestionable. You can't question. You know, if people say, "Oh, memory is fallible" and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, yeah, I get that. I've done psychology degree, and I understand that completely. But certain things, when you can remember your thought processes from the time and all these other different things, it's a mind boggler. It's a mind boggler.
Yeah, it is. And it's one that it'll probably everyone will have one, and even if it turns out to be just a weird memory thing, it's super interesting because it still points at the fact that who you are, what you think isn't real. It's not set in stone. Like you could go your entire life thinking that there was a hyphen between kit and cat, and then realize no, there isn't, and there's never been. Like. But
yes,
I have memories of it. But there is that interesting thing that they did I don't know if it was an experiment or something came up where this person had a memory about drinking Coca-Cola at a baseball game when they were whatever age. And I have a perfect memory of drinking it from the bottle, the thing or whatever. And then when they went back later, they had to realize that they had stopped being put in bottles by the stage, and there was no way that she could have been drinking the bottle at that point or whatever. So there is a memory thing where we do kind of, as I say, we remembered last time we remembered something, and we do change, inflate, and all of those type of things. But I don't think the Mandela effect is quite that. I think our Mandela effect on Reddit is quite like that at times. But retcon seems to be a bit better. But there's something weird going on. I don't know what it means, and I don't know what it's pointing to, and I don't know what the implications are. But it's the same as UFOs. I mean, that whole thing of like, there's definitely UFOs. There's no question of it. What they are is what the question is, And
yes, exactly.
So to dismiss UFOs is ludicrous because it's a huge phenomenon that's been happening for so long. But it's to jump to little green men from Mars, which like who does anymore? Because like that's such a 50s thing. But like that's the problem. That's the thing. It's something, and even if it's a mental phenomena alone or psychological phenomena, it's really worth looking at and not dismissing because it's so prevalent and such. And there's such pushback from people that it would make it seem that there's definitely something to it. People don't normally care about fantasy.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I read something the other day. I can't remember the context fully, but someone was saying that their modus operandi when they're out and about meeting new people is to to kind of get a level of where they're at is to ask them about the Mandela effect. Are they aware of it, or at the very least, are they willing to entertain the thought? And if they are, then you think, oh, I can vibe with this person. If they're like, oh, that's crazy nonsense, then you think, all right, then fair enough. We're probably not gonna gel.
But I think like even dismissing it, like it's a fun thing if nothing else.
That's
too.
it. Yeah. Well, let everything simmer and ponder, haven't you? Which brings me nicely onto Randonauting, which was the catalyst that brought us together. My brother Luke sent me a link to the Randonauting thing, and if you would be so kind, just give us your take on the whole thing. I will put a link in the description box essentially for the ultimate guide, which comes from Reddit, which breaks it down nicely. But tell us about how you came across it, Tommie. And
well, there was a friend of mine sent me the link. He does a podcast called Let Go Spudland, and we've done various podcasts or videos together where we've done like kind of remote viewing stuff. And just he's an interesting. He definitely came from a very skeptical background, and then spent hang out with me for a while, where he's the most woo-woo person you will ever meet now.
Well done.
Well done.
Well done.
But so he sent me the link initially, and I had a look, and I just immediately just went, "This is awesome! I'm totally on board with this." And I got a very good kind of I got a buzz from it, even the idea, and I said, "I'm definitely going to do it." And the idea of randonauting is that we're in the matrix. We're in a sense, it's predetermined. We are. All our actions and all the things we do are kind of on, train tracks. We're about doing them, or it's all predetermined, so all these type of things. And so if there would be a way to engage or to pull yourself out of the matrix, what would it be? And the idea was that it's to send you to points that you wouldn't ever get to in your life, that you wouldn't, by your own kind of momentum or your own kind of life circumstances, you wouldn't ever end up at this place at this time. And so it's kind of a random, in a sense, a random number generator, quantum weirdness. I don't know the math behind it exactly, but
I think there's a computer, right? There's a computer that
the computer does something.
Yeah, it's all connected to a computer, I think, which generally randomly generates coordinates.
I think what it is
I'll put the link in.
It takes a map of an area. Say, I think it's 5 miles. I don't know what exact thing.
I think you can set it for as far as you want.
All right. Yeah. So then it hits that area with a load of random points, and where they group together becomes an interesting point that you should go to. That there seems to be some sort of weirdness to it, and where there's no points, which is a void, seems to be somewhere that you should be interested in going to as well. So if you hit something randomly, and there seems to be a group, then it doesn't seem to be random. So that's the kind of principle behind it. And so by going to that place, you end up somewhere where you would never have been, shouldn't be, and that you have, in a sense, broken out of the matrix kind of thing. And what happens is weird things happen when you get to the place.
They do. Indeed,
and particularly, it's like the Magick thing. Weird things happen the first couple of times you do it, and then it dips, and then nothing happens for a while. And then again, whatever is that kind of reason for that, it picks back up again. But what kind of happened for me, and talking to the guys behind it, they've said they've kind of augmented and changed it and worked on that, is I started getting places all the time that I couldn't get to. Like it'd be in water, or it would be, someone's back garden that you're just not going to, no, I'm using this app. Can I look in your back garden?
Yeah.
So that kind of took a lot of the fun and stuff out of it. And then I was kind of doing stuff where I'm going, well, can I engage just without the app? Can I do it? And what I discovered is, no, I can't, because no matter what you do, you are still making a decision, even if it's, I feel I should go left, so I'm going right. That you're still making, that's the decision. So it's not kind of random. So it's something that I have to get back into and doing, because it does feel like you're causing something to change. And there's definitely a buzz from it. There's an elation from it.
Yeah,
kind of
it just injects a bit of, as you say, forgive the cliche, but it does just inject a bit of magic into things, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely enchants life. And even if when it comes, like the very first one I did, it just turned out to be a plant, but it was on its own in a field, kind of a, or beside a thing. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's, it has made that plant magic to me now. It has enchanted that plant. That every time I pass that area, I go, oh, there's that place where that thing was, and it's made it special or whatever. And then other things that people report, like there's always kind of like messages and.
Well, I had two. I had two, Tommie. Now the first one, I thought I'll give it a little try. I set it to 1.5 miles and you followed it. Ended up in this random kind of side street in a kind of cul-de-sac, and nothing going on. Right underneath this lamppost, and I thought, well, nothing of any significance. All right, fair enough. And then I looked up, and the lamppost was one of these LED lampposts, and it seemed to be, it was the only LED light in the street. Now, you know, coincidentally, I'd at that time been doing freedom of information requests regarding the LED lights back home in Merthyr and in Swindon. So I thought, oh, you know, tenuous link at best, you know, whatever. But the next time, I was with my partner, and it took us to this huge field of solar panels next to a forest that I forget the name. I think it's like Bluebell Forest. And bearing in mind, my partner's always lived in Swindon, didn't even know this forest existed, and we've got, you know, a dog. So, cool, new discovery. So that was great. And then we have a local meetup group called the Rabbit Hole, and by these solar panels, there was a rabbit carved into the wood, really ornamental, quite nice. I'll put a picture in the video. All right, yeah, cool, just a rabbit. But then when we were walking back to the car, we saw 2 rabbits. Now, bearing in mind, walked that dog every day for 2 years since we had it. Never seen a rabbit before. See the wooden rabbit, see 2 rabbits, and I've got a video of it. And I'm like, all right, cool, like that. And then I've not seen one since either, you know.
Right.
And, you know, you make of it what you will. At the end of the day, if you're willing to just embrace the magic and the mundane, these are, and it just injects a bit of
and there's a bit
of wonder,
humor to it as well, because when you put in, well, originally it used to be you have to put in get a tractor, so get in a tractor point, and that was the command to get the thing. And what happened was, on like 3 or 4 occasions, I did a video about it. It sent me, and the last point would be literally a tractor. It was like, yeah, and it was like the first time I go, ah, ha, ha, that's very funny, very funny. Second time, third time, fourth time, I was like, right, okay,
nice.
I take your point. You know, it's kind of very literal or whatever. Which, you know, there's a lesson there to, you know, if you're going to ask for something, make sure, you know, that thing about magic, and you know, Randonauting definitely falls within magic, is that there seems to be a thing that magic will materialize, but in the most dickish way possible, you know, so or the most direct way possible. Like, there's definitely a trickster element to it, you know, and that's the thing people get kind of scared by, in that if you do money magic, say, they'll go, oh, is my aunt going to die, and the money is an inheritance. And it's not quite that, but it's kind of like that, you know. It's dickish. The most dick, that's Gordon White's his thing. He says that it'll manifest in the most dickish way possible. So be aware of it. Like, if you want, you know, whatever is the easiest, kind of most direct route for your desire, that's probably what's going to happen. You know, if you ask for a tractor, you're going to get a tractor. You know? That's it. So
tread carefully. Well, Tommie, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, brother. Was there anything you wanted to round off to? Or was there anything you wanted to round off to? Or
no, not really. Let me see. The website, I'm sure
I'll put all the links in the description box. On the website earlier.
I have a Discord that you should join, and you should hang out in.
Will do. I set my own up earlier, actually, so I'll send you the link and I'll get yours. Awesome.
Brilliant, because I'm trying to get off Facebook, and it's
same.
Because it's
same.
It's not good for your health, you know, your mental health at all, and you know, deliberately so. They've said that anyway. So I'm trying to find somewhere where I can still interact with everyone and talk about these things.
Have you seen Canund?
Have I seen?
Canund, Canund. That's another kind of social network that's been put together. Seems like it may have potential. Yeah,
seems to be a new one every week, whatever. But the thing about Discord is that people seem to like it. Like,
I've noticed. Yeah,
you know, so it's like, if you're going to, like, this time next year, Discord will be the Facebook. You know, it'll have the same kind of issues and all that. But for the minute, this is where it seems to be.
This is where I've seen. Brilliant.
So that you know, if people are into talking about these things, that go there as well.
Yes, excellent.
We never even got around to the 40 servants or any of that stuff.
That's
fine. No, we'll do it next time.
Let's have a follow up then. Brilliant. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, awesome.
But it's like what I'm probably most well known for is this Oracle deck that I've done that has servitors, and check it out. It's 40 servants.
What we'll do, if it's all right with yourself, but as I said, it's been really nice to get to know each other a little bit, and we'll have a follow up video in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have a really get into, because I do want to know about that, especially in light of, you know, I was seeing Mark Passio's video and kind of the Tree of Life. I've got a general kind of understanding of tarot and all the rest of it, so it'll be actually kind of nice to learn all about that, and I think it would be nice to make an episode in and of itself, if that's all right with yourself.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, brother. All right, well, you take care of yourself, sir, and we'll catch up again very soon. All the best. Take care. Thanks, Tommie.